$412. That's the number on your screen right after rent clears. You look at it a second too long because part of you is already running the math. What happens if something goes wrong this month? Then it does. The car makes a sound it didn't make yesterday. Your kid comes home with a permission slip that costs $60 you don't have. Your landlord just wants to check something about next month's rent. None of it is a real disaster on its own. That's what makes it worse. Each one is small enough to feel manageable and frequent enough to never actually stop. And $412 stops being money. It becomes a countdown. This video is for that exact feeling. We're building a real emergency fund in 60 days, even starting from almost nothing. Most people think the problem is income. Earn more than you can finally save. The actual problem is smaller than that and more fixable. You build the emergency fund so getting ahead becomes possible in the first place. Right now, every small crisis is quietly draining the energy you'd use to build something better. Fix that, and everything downstream gets easier. If you've ever felt one bad week away from disaster, hit subscribe. This channel is built for exactly that feeling. When you're constantly worried about the next bill, planning past this week gets hard. Not because you're careless, because your attention is already spoken for. That's why just save 20% doesn't work for someone in that spot. It's not a discipline problem. It's a bandwidth problem, which means the fix isn't willpower. It's a system that needs less of it. One that runs whether you're motivated or exhausted, whether this week is calm or a mess. That's the entire design behind what comes next. 4 moves, spread across 60 days. None of them depend on you feeling ready. Quick reality check. A significant share of adults have little or no emergency savings, and Federal Reserve research shows that many adults would struggle to cover even a relatively small, unexpected expense using cash or savings. The exact percentage matters less than what the number tells us. If you're starting from zero, you're not some unusual financial failure. A lot of people are in the same position. And here's the important part. You don't need $10,000 before an emergency fund becomes useful. A few $100s can already change what happens when something goes wrong, because it can stop what I call the domino effect. One unpaid bill becomes a late fee. The late fee becomes a card balance. The balance creates another payment, and that payment makes next month's budget even tighter. A small buffer doesn't solve every financial problem. It just stops the first domino from falling, and sometimes that's enough to change the entire month. Here's the challenge: $750 in 60 days. That number isn't a rule. Depending on your income, your bills, and what you can realistically redirect, you might finish with $300. You might reach $500. You might go past $750. The exact number matters less than the direction. What matters is finishing these 60 days with a real layer of protection that didn't exist before. $750 is the target we're building toward, not because the number is magic, because a real number, chased on purpose, is much easier to build than a vague promise to save more. And here's why a buffer like this matters more than it sounds like it should. One unpaid bill turns into a late fee. The late fee turns into a card balance. The balance turns into stress that follows you into every other decision that month. A buffer doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to be enough to stop the first domino. Not willpower, not a strict budget you'll quit by Thursday. 4 moves laid out across 60 days. If your savings and your spending money live in the same account, you don't really have a savings system. You have money that's one bad mood away from disappearing. Open a separate account today, somewhere slightly annoying to reach. Name it something boring. Do not touch works fine. Hide it from your main screen if your bank lets you. This isn't about the amount of money yet. It's about removing temptation before it exists. You're building a wall between money you can spend and money you're protecting. Most people wait to save whatever's left at the end of the month. There's never anything left, so set an automatic transfer for the day your paycheck lands. Not when you remember, not when you feel motivated. The amount matters less than you'd think. $5 a day, $20 a week. Whatever you can automate without constantly noticing it is a good starting point. A small transfer that actually happens beats a big plan that never does. And once it's automated, you don't have to win the same argument with yourself every payday. The system makes the decision for you. Your brain needs proof this works. So this week, find quick wins. Check your statement. Find one subscription you forgot about. Cancel it. That's real money. And it also kills the habit of paying for something you don't use. Try the 48-hour rule. Any non-essential purchase waits 2 days, not forever, just long enough to break the impulse and sell one thing this weekend, something in a drawer, something in a cupboard, something you haven't used in a year. It doesn't need to be exciting. It just needs to turn into money in the emergency fund. The point isn't to completely change your lifestyle. It's to create your first piece of evidence that this can work. Now, do a fast audit. Look at the last 14 days of spending. Sort everything into 2 piles. Needed it. Didn't need it. Not to feel guilty, just to see the pattern. You may find money sitting in that second pile. Take out that replaced food you already had, a convenience run that turned into $12 extra, a purchase you don't fully remember making. You're not cutting all of it, you're noticing it, and noticing is usually enough to slow some of it down. There's another reason this works. A lot of spending isn't really about the money, it's about decision fatigue. When every purchase is a fresh decision, eventually you're going to make some of them while tired, stressed, or bored. So create a few defaults in advance. A standard answer for, do I actually need this? Before you're standing at the checkout trying to decide. Fewer decisions in the moment means fewer decisions made by the most exhausted version of you. By day 30, the account exists, the transfers are running, and you found real money without making some dramatic sacrifice. The second half isn't about starting over. It's about protecting what you've built and pushing it further. $10 a day for 60 days is $600 on its own. Add a canceled subscription, a sold item, a temporary reduction in one expense, maybe some extra income if that's available to you. Suddenly the target starts looking much more realistic, not easy, not guaranteed, just possible. And that's important because you don't need one giant financial breakthrough. You need several small decisions that point in the same direction. Now define what counts as an emergency before you actually have one. Health, housing, getting to work, essential utilities, those are emergencies. A sale is not. A bad day is not. Boredom is not an emergency, even when it really, really feels like one at 11 at night. Write the difference down somewhere you'll actually see it. And if life throws you a real emergency and you have to use the fund, that's okay. That's what it's there for. But make one rule. The next money you save goes toward rebuilding it. That single rule keeps the fund alive instead of slowly bleeding out. And if you reach day 60 and you're short of $750, that's not failure. You still have something you didn't have 60 days earlier. More importantly, you now have a system with momentum behind it. That's worth more than a bigger number you gave up on halfway through. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Sarah. Old Sarah's pattern was simple. Unexpected expense, credit card, next month's payment, tighter budget, repeat. She tried a strict budget once. It lasted 11 days, so she tried something different. Separate account, automatic transfer, canceled a forgotten subscription, sold an old tablet. By day 30, she had a little over $300. Then her car needed a new alternator, $410. Old Sarah puts that on a card at 20-something% and spends months paying for one bad Tuesday. New Sarah pays cash. Annoying, not a crisis. Then she starts rebuilding. The fund didn't make her rich. It made the emergency smaller. That's the whole idea. Because the real benefit wasn't the $300 sitting in the account. It was knowing she could take a hit and keep standing. Same income, same bills, same job, different system. This is the part people miss when they think about getting good with money. It's rarely one huge income jump. It's usually structure that keeps working when motivation doesn't. Your first $100 will probably feel like nothing. It won't look impressive next to the size of the problems you're worried about. Save it anyway, because the number isn't the only thing you're building. You're proving that your system can run without motivation. Once that becomes normal, the number gets easier to grow. This was never about becoming rich in 60 days. Nobody builds wealth in 2 months. It's about one specific thing, making sure a bad week stays a bad week instead of becoming a financial disaster that follows you for a year. You don't need perfect conditions to start. You don't need a bigger paycheck first. You don't need a calmer month, and you don't need to feel ready. Open the separate account. Automate what you can. Find one fast win this week, then come back and tell me your day one number. Because 60 days from now, you can still be one surprise bill away from panic. Or you can have something between you and the next emergency. Not wealth, not financial freedom, a buffer. And sometimes that's the first thing you need before everything else can start getting better.